Christianity is coming back into public schools, and we need to talk about it. Let's move over a few states to Iowa. Just like we had the curriculum concerns in Texas and the standard concerns in Oklahoma, Iowa is on the same path. So Senate Bill 138 in Iowa has received initial approval from the state's Education Subcommittee. Why is this concerning? Because the bill provides standards for adopting Bible classes in public schools. Yes, you heard that correctly. Bible classes in public schools. Now, the bill lists these Bible classes just as electives for grades 9 through 12, and potential courses include Hebrew Scriptures or the Old Testament, the New Testament, or both the Old and the New Testament. These courses would be approved for supposedly academic purposes, which include providing students with knowledge of biblical content, characters, poetry, and narratives that are prerequisites to understanding contemporary society. This sounds a lot like the Texas curriculum that forces Bible stories where they don't belong, right? Like a story about King David before reading Psalms 23 in a poetry unit in 5th grade. Another approved purpose to include Bible electives is to use the Bible classes to familiarize students with the content, history, literary styles, and or influence of the Bible. Now, I'm not saying the Bible has no influence on culture or no historical relevance. Of course it does. However, it is not the only influence on culture and history. If schools approve Bible electives, why not include electives about the Quran, about other religious texts? Yeah? But no, of course not. The bill even includes a clause saying that a course offered under the bill is subject to federal and state guidelines regarding religion neutrality and shall recognize and accommodate the diverse religion views, traditions, and perspectives of students enrolled in the school district. Such a course shall not endorse, favor, promote, or disfavor or be hostile toward any particular religion, faith, or non-religious perspective. Now, that's a whole lot of fancy-sounding bullshit, right? If a course were actually offering a neutral, unbiased information that doesn't endorse or favor any one religion, it would not be a course just on the Bible. It would be a religious studies course, or perhaps a series of religious studies electives. Just slapping something on a bill saying that it's neutral and unbiased doesn't actually make it neutral and unbiased. And besides the not-so-subtle push of Judeo-Christian beliefs, these electives promote, yet again, a twisted view of U.S. history and culture. Dare I say it? It's yet again another curriculum change that promotes Christian nationalism as true history. Disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And completely ignorant on the effects that other religions and other people groups have had on this country. The good news, I guess, is that these are electives and not mandatory courses. Also, the school board would get to vote on whether to include them or not. However, if the school board does approve these electives, that means a whole lot more of government funds would go to religious courses. Not only funds for new materials and Bibles, but also funds to train teachers. And again, we're talking probably in the millions. Now, I'm all for paid training for teachers, 100%, but not for glorified Sunday school classes. Okay? I mean, come on. And I'm not the only one who thinks these classes are a bit too Sunday school-y. Connie Ryan from Interfaith Alliance of Iowa says the following. The very nature of this legislation, as written, gives preference in law to one religion over all others. Bible-specific courses and scores can become nothing more than Sunday school lessons masquerading as instruction about religion. The outcome of narrowly focused Bible courses often becomes a way to endorse one religious perspective in public schools, insisting on a conservative evangelical Christian view and promoting that with public school students. I couldn't agree more. And this brings up a very important point. These courses would undoubtedly be promoting Christianity, not Judaism, or at least not authentic Judaism. Even with the elective option with Hebrew Scriptures or the Old Testament, which should theoretically explore Judaism, not Christianity, the elective is phrased in terms of the Christian Bible. It's not called Exploring the Torah and other ancient Jewish texts. No, it's specifically mentioning the Old Testament, and I highly doubt they would include any other religious texts outside of the Old Testament. So this is giving a very Christian look at what was originally Jewish texts. So again, not only does this promote one religion over the other, in other words, Christianity over Judaism, but it also provides a distorted view of another religion, Judaism, because you're looking at these texts with a Christian lens, not a Jewish lens, as they were originally written. And speaking of distorted views, how would these electives be taught? I would love to know. Would the Bible stories be presented as history or myths? Would they be taught alongside archaeological evidence or lack thereof? Will there be a discussion on the positive and negative effects the Bible has had on the world? Or will there just be a focus on the positive effects? You see where I'm going with this. You see why I have concerns with this, right? Unfortunately, preliminary approval from the Education Committee does not bode well, and this bill might actually pass. The General Assembly could still vote no, but the fact that the whole Committee on Education approved this is just absolutely mind-boggling to me. A recent article cited some of the reasons that people support this bill, and a major one, besides the supposedly massive impact that the Bible has had on U.S. history and culture, is the effects of biblical literacy. So apparently, knowing about the Bible leads to a better ability to not only understand our history and other faiths, but also a better ability to read works from authors like Charles Dickens and Tolstoy. Now, I'm really struggling to understand this train of thought. Perhaps reading the Bible in the New King James Version, an older version, might make it easier for students to then go on and read Charles Dickens and Tolstoy. But if that's true, then the opposite also applies. If you start with reading Charles Dickens, then it would be easier to read other texts like Tolstoy and Shakespeare, right? Or if you start with Shakespeare, then you can read other more difficult texts. Why does it have to start with the Bible? I don't really get it. And also, how does reading the Bible help us understand people of other faiths? It honestly does just the opposite, right? The Abington District versus Shemp case was also cited. And if you remember back to the beginning of this video, that was the case that deemed it unconstitutional to include Bible reading and recited prayer in public schools. So while some legislators in other states are saying that the Abington versus Shemp case was overturned with the Coach Kennedy case, legislators in Iowa are looking at it a bit differently, saying that you can bring certain religious classes into public schools as long as it is part of a non-biased secular curriculum. So my first question here is the Abington versus Shemp case overturned or not? Because we have some conflicting opinions across the country. And my second question is, are Bible electives in public schools part of a non-biased secular curriculum? I would have to say no. A secular non-biased curriculum would include electives on all religions, not just one. This video looks at one state's legislation regarding education and religion. If you want to watch the whole video about how Christianity is coming back into public schools, check out the link in the description below.